Hello, everyone, and welcome to this beautiful Thursday. Is it already Thursday? Welcome to our hybrid cloud authentication lab. So today we're going to show you how to add LinkedIn authentication to Red Hat OpenShift applications with IBM Cloud's App ID. So feel free to share in the chat if you're joining live on Crowdcast right now. We're going to introduce ourselves in just a second. So feel free, if you're comfortable, to share your name and pronouns, your title, maybe what company you work for, or maybe you're currently studying with the program, where you're from or joining from, and if you'd like to share something you love and or a quirk. So something that's uniquely weird or different about you. So if you would like to follow along with today's lab and get access to your OpenShift cluster, you will need an IBM Cloud account for that. So you can sign up for a free IBM Cloud account with the following link, ibm.biz/os-linkedin-auth. If you're joining on Crowdcast, the link is there in the chat. So you can go ahead and just click on that and sign up for an account. If you already have an account, go ahead and log in. We're going to show you how to access your cluster in just a minute. We do have slides with all of the information, all the URLs and everything. We also have a lab guide. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, you will see the links and resources. That will take you to the lab guide that has all of the directions and the guide for the whole lab that you can follow along to do everything that we're going to be doing today. You can also follow along visually in the slides as well. Yes, the live stream is being recorded, and you can refer back to it, watch it back later. If you have to drop off early, you can always access it at the link that you joined with today, the Crowdcast link, at crowdcast.io/e/os-linkedin-auth. So the recording will always live at the Crowdcast link, so you can refer back to it at any time. So I'll introduce myself. So my name is Jenna Ritten. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently a cloud developer advocate at IBM. I'm originally from Detroit, currently joining from Western New York. And something I love are my dogs, and hopefully we won't hear them scratching or crying over the next hour. So we'll see how well they do. I'm going to pass things over to my teammate Dave so he can introduce himself for all of you as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Dave. You may remember me from such Crowdcast webinars as Hybrid Cloud Authentication Lab, adding Google Auth to Red Hat OpenShift, which was last week. I work here in San Francisco for IBM. Good to see everybody here. Today's lab is going to be a little bit different from the Google Authentication lab because what we're doing is we're taking an application that was designed to authenticate against LinkedIn and just be deployed on your local environment, and we're going to try to deploy it to Red Hat OpenShift and still have it authenticate against LinkedIn. So I don't anticipate that we'll be able to get all the way through the workshop today, probably just about 75% of the way, but we're still going to be able to get a lot of stuff done. And most importantly, we will be able to assign you your own Red Hat OpenShift cluster for you to build and deploy applications the rest of the workshop today. Jenna is going to walk you through grabbing your Red Hat OpenShift cluster in just a second, but I did want to point out that if you want to get started on the lab, there's actually a link down there at the bottom that says links and lab instructions. And that's going to cover all of the different steps that we're going to walk you through today, including signing up for your IBM Cloud account, logging into LinkedIn, and then grabbing your cluster and everything like that. So I'm also going to paste that link into the chat right now. It's a very, very fancy GitHub README markdown file. And yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Jenna again.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Dave. So the first thing we're going to do is, if you haven't already, go ahead and click the IBM Cloud sign up link to sign up for an IBM Cloud account. Once you have your account, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to access your OpenShift cluster. So there are two things you're going to need in order to do that. You're going to need the URL, which is this HTTPS OpenID Auth 2.mybluemix.net, and the key is OS Lab. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to do for you all, is we're going to just do the thing. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to sign up, sign into my IBM Cloud account. And this is my tester account that I use to make sure that I'm seeing what all of you are seeing as well. All right, perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that link that we just shared in the slides and in the chat, open up a new tab here, and I'm going to go to this link, OpenID Auth 2.mybluemix.net, and this is what it's going to look like. It's going to ask for a lab key and your IBM ID. Now the lab key again is that OS Lab. Your IBM ID, it's asking for your email. So this is my, oh, not that one, sorry. This is my tester email here. There we go. You're going to click agree to the terms and conditions, click submit. Oh, JK. It's okay. I have backups. I may already have a access to the lab from last week. That's okay. So what you're going to do, again, is you're going to stick that link in your browser. You're going to click agree to terms and conditions and click submit. And this is what you'll see. It says, congratulations, you've been assigned an OpenShift cluster. You're going to click where it says log into this IBM Cloud account. It also tells you the name of the cluster you've been assigned. So your cluster is going to look a little different than this. Your cluster is going to be that it's going to have that OpenID Auth 2 in the name, and then a cluster. So you're going to click the IBM Cloud account. It's going to take you to your the IBM Cloud console, and you'll see a little dot. You can't see it here, but you'll see a little dot above notifications, and you're going to go ahead and click on that notifications in the top menu bar. And at the very top, you'll see a message that says, you are invited to join an account in IBM Cloud. So you'll click on that message, and then you'll get the little message here, hey, Cool. You're invited to join this account. It will say Advo Work with an account ID, and you'll click Join Now. And then you'll come to this screen, and you'll have your email, your name. This will be pre-populated. You don't need to do anything. But you're going to click Accept Invite. So you want to accept the invitation to join the Advo Work account. And then it'll come here. It'll confirm that you've been added to the account. And when you click Log In, you'll come back here. Now, there will be these arrows and little boxes at the top. When you click it, you should see now your personal account, any other accounts maybe you have. I have another account here, and then that Advo Work account. So you're going to click this button. It's right next to Manage. You're going to go ahead and click on Advo Work and select the Advo Work account. So once you're in the Advo Work account, you're going to scroll down in your dashboard here to your resource summary. And it's going to say, you know, welcome. You have one resource. You're going to click View All in the top right here. And what you're going to see is that cluster that you've been assigned. And this is what it'll look like. The name will be a little different. The number will be different. Each person has their own assigned cluster with a different number. And then you're going to go ahead and click on your cluster. And then here you're able to view your OpenShift cluster in the IBM Cloud Console. What we're going to do is we're going to actually go to the OpenShift Web Console. And we can actually do this one of two ways. We can click the OpenShift Web Console. What I have here is I just clicked Actions and clicked Connect via the CLI. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to access your IBM Cloud cluster, OpenShift cluster, sorry, brain fart. You're going to want to connect to your OpenShift cluster, and you're going to need a command to do that. So if you click Connect via CLI, each button actually is going to take you to this, your Red Hat OpenShift container platform. It's going to give you an overview of your cluster. And what you're going to do is you're going to click on your name, your IAM in the top corner here. And you're going to click Copy Login Command. It's going to take you to this view here, just an extra step. It says Display Token. When you click on Display Token, you'll get your commands here. So it has your API token, you have a login token, and then you have a token to log in directly against the API. This first login with this token, this is what we're going to be using right here. So go ahead and keep this tab open. You're going to just copy pasta from here in just a few minutes. And Dave is going to take you through creating your App ID instance and accessing your cluster and, sorry, logging into your cluster and starting to get your App ID authentication instance set up with your cluster and configure your LinkedIn Auth integration.
Awesome. This is great. So all the steps that Jenna was following are also in the links and lab instructions down below, but not with any pictures or commentary. So thank you, Jenna. That makes a lot more sense. And just to clarify, like getting a Red Hat OpenShift cluster for a few days is normally a pretty expensive proposition because Red Hat OpenShift is, you know, not only it's a commercial product that runs on top of Kubernetes, so it's designed for enterprise customers. And so not only are you getting the resources that it's running on and Kubernetes for free, you're also getting Red Hat OpenShift license fee for free. So please feel free to mess around with that cluster, you know, deploy your own applications, go through the UI. Yeah, enjoy that. So I am going to probably share my screen now. That would make a lot of sense, I think. Oh, my head's gigantic. Let's get that out of the way. So as Jenna mentioned, what we'll be doing is we'll be connecting our Cloud Shell to our Red Hat OpenShift cluster once we've been assigned. So just to go through the instructions again. So Jenna covered most of these. We're we signed up for IBM Cloud, and then we filled out the information to get our OpenShift cluster assigned to us. And now we're at this step. So we're going to say connect via CLI. And we are going to copy this command. Going to click display token. And then this is going to be unique for you. And we are going to paste this into the Cloud Shell. Nice. So OC is our OpenShift command. This is basically the OpenShift version of kube control. We're basically going to use it to mess around with our cluster just remotely from this Cloud Shell, because this Cloud Shell is not actually running in our cluster. This is just sort of a random shell out there in the cloud. We use it because then we don't need to worry too much about dependencies on your local machine, but you could also run this command on your local machine. It would connect to the same cluster. Okay, cool. So let's go back to the workshop steps. Here we're going to create a new project and generate some public and private keys. But you know what? Before we get to this, we actually want to go back up and create our App ID service. So if you click on this link, it'll bring you to App ID. I think I have that open here. So App ID is a cloud-based service that you can create, and it's actually completely free, which is pretty sweet. There is a light tier. There's also other pay-as-you-go tiers, but App ID allows you to integrate with a number of different identity providers, and you can actually see those here on the left-hand side. So you could, let me just click Manage Authentication. This looks a little bit prettier. So you can integrate with Facebook. Last week, as I mentioned, we integrated with Google. Most popular one, IBM ID. All the cool kids use IBM ID. And then also you could do custom identity providers. So let's go back to our steps here. So you're going to create the service. Make sure that you choose the light tier before clicking create. Let me just open that page up so you can see what that looks like. All right, so light tier selected by default. You've also got the graduated tier with pricing details. And then you'll click create. I'm not going to do that because I already have one here. And then once we do that, what are we going to do? We're going to go to applications and click add application. And we're going to choose web application. I did not forget to save. I'm going to leave. And so you'll click add application, create an application name, and then choose regular web application. Jenna is working on a workshop that hopefully we'll do in a few weeks where the authentication will actually be in a single page application. But this is just going to be a regular web application. As soon as you name it, the save button will turn blue and you can click it. And then you will be able to get your application credentials. So if you click the little caret next to your application, you'll see that there's a client ID, tenant ID, secret, all sorts of fancy stuff here. All this stuff is going to be pasted into our web app in a future step. So just leave this tab open once you've created the App ID service and you've created this application. Just leave it open. We'll come back and we'll copy and paste sometime in the future. There's one other thing that we have to do to our App ID service, and that's we're going to create a custom identity provider. And we're going to keep that tab open too, because we're going to paste a key in there in a future step. So let's go to custom identity. You can see I'm cheating a little bit here. I actually already pasted a public key that I created, but when you click custom identity, it will be blank. So just FYI, and then we will generate this public key in a hot minute. So we're done with our IBM Cloud. We're actually already done with assigning a Red Hat OpenShift cluster, so that's nice. We've just got a few things to do with LinkedIn. So in this case, what we want to use LinkedIn for is an identity provider. We want you to be able to log into our web application with your LinkedIn account with your LinkedIn username and password, just to make it a little bit easier for people to log into our application. And so, whereas Google, when we were looking through our app ID authentication identity providers, Google was actually listed specifically. With LinkedIn, we're going to use a custom identity provider, so it's a little more open-ended, but you'll be able to use LinkedIn, you'll be able to use a number of other identity providers, even if there isn't a specific integration with IBM App ID. So let's go back to our instructions. First thing you're going to need to do is to create a page on LinkedIn. There is a little tutorial that I will open in another tab here about creating a page on LinkedIn. Some of you may already have a page on LinkedIn. Pretty sweet. You could just use that one. But if not, then you'll need to follow these steps. Page creation is currently available on desktop only. This is the future. So click the work icon, click create a company page, then you'll need to select a bunch of information about that page, and then click create page. I created a page for the JavaScript conference that I helped curate back before COVID. You could create a page, just for this lab if you wanted to, or you could create a page related to something in your personal or professional life. All right, so once you've done that, we'll go back to the instructions, and you'll need to create an app on LinkedIn. So if you'll notice, the URL here has switched from LinkedIn, or the UI here has switched from LinkedIn to LinkedIn developers, or just in developers, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what their marketing is. So you'll need to create an application name, and here you'll need to reference your page. So for me, I just chose my forward.js page. And then you need to upload a logo. I've already done this, so I'm not going to click create app. And then you need to read and agree to the terms. And just like everybody always does, we click on the terms and we read absolutely every word of it before we click the checkbox, of course. So once that is done, then you will be able to go into your apps and you will see, hey, look at this. Here is the app that I created, and you can see that it references this page. Before it is approved, what will happen is that you will actually get an admin, you'll get a message as the page admin saying, hey, do you want to approve this application? So you actually need to authorize the application that's connected to your page, which is a little bit like that meme of the two Spider-Men pointing at each other. It's like, hey, I'm going to approve the app that is connected to my own page for my own app. Seems a little bit unnecessary, but I'm sure that in huge organizations, that's actually really important. So there's a note in the step where you actually need to approve it. Also, in the products tab, you do need to sign in. You have to say sign in with LinkedIn. So for Auth, we will have this client ID and secret. We'll also come back and change this redirect URL for our app at some point in the future. But for now, the main thing is that we need to make sure that sign in with LinkedIn is selected. So normally you will see this down here, but instead you're going to click select and promote it to added products. Nice. Okay, cool. At this point, we are pretty much done with LinkedIn. We will just leave our Auth tab open so that we can always come back and copy our client ID, client secret, and change our redirect URL for our application. So as Jenna mentioned, if you haven't already, make sure that you followed these instructions to get your own cluster assigned. This is something that you'll need an IBM ID to do. So make sure that you did sign up for your IBM Cloud account at this link, which is also in the chat. But yeah, you'll fill out the form at this URL, which is also in the chat. And remember that OS Lab is the lab key. You'll go to your notifications, accept your invite, which is just clicking a link, and then go back to your IBM Cloud dashboard. As Jenna mentioned, there will be a drop-down menu in the upper right. And you will go to the AdvoWork account. I think I have that open in another tab. Yeah, here we go. And then you'll get to your cluster. So you'll see the cluster has a name, something like this, OpenID auth2 dash, and then an integer. So I got cluster number 2. When you are working with your cluster, in addition to working through the lab, I also recommend checking out the OpenShift web console. So if you click this blue button up here in the upper right, you'll actually get connected to a user interface that you can use to monitor and manage your entire cluster without using the command line. So for the rest of this lab, we'll be using the command line quite a bit through the IBM Cloud Shell here. But in addition to this, every OC command that we run, you could just as easily do that same thing. Let me just close this through the OpenShift Container Platform UI here. So you can see there's all these details on the left. You could work with your operators, view your workloads, networking, storage, builds, monitoring, compute, user management, administration. My favorite part is to go to the developer context. And here you can see all of the different projects on the system. You can see all of the different endpoints, and you can actually create a new project or add a new deployment in a bunch of different ways. Okay, so back to the lab. So at this point, we are logged into our Red Hat OpenShift cluster. We're going to create our new project. Let's go back to our Cloud Shell. During this lab, you'll actually see a number of things happening. Some of them will happen on the Cloud Shell environment, which is similar to like our local environment. Some of them we will be using this OC command to do. When we're using the OC command, that's actually executing on our remote OpenShift cluster, right? So everything OC related is actually going through this login command and messing around with our OpenShift cluster. So just FYI. Go back to the lab here. So now we're going to generate some new public and private keys. And so you can do this with OpenSSL, which is installed by default in Cloud Shell. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a private key file and a public key file. And those will allow us to make sure that our custom identity provider will work with our web application and also work with App ID. And so run these commands. I've already done this, but you'll be able to execute this command, cat public key.pem. So let me go back to my Cloud Shell. Oh, I guess I will need to do that again, but that's okay because Cloud Shell restarted. It's totally cool. Oh, you know what? Maybe, yeah, I'll just do that in Cloud Shell. That's fine. Sweet. So now we've got our public key, which we can share. And I'm going to paste this into our app ID. Where are you, app ID? Ah, there you are. So I'm just going to replace this key pair here. Eventually, we're going to use the private key to sign a JWT assertion. But for now, we're just going to paste the public key into our app ID instance. So now we are going to git clone our application. So we have an application here. I believe I have this open. So this is actually an application that was that existed already in a tutorial on IBM Cloud that we're now repurposing for our Red Hat OpenShift instance. There's actually a link to this tutorial here at the top of our lab instructions that I can open up here. I don't think I already have it open. So this is the prior tutorial about using LinkedIn integration through App ID custom identity. Gives you a little more background about what exactly we'll be doing. It gives you this nice workflow talking about how the application will be talking with our identity provider, in this case LinkedIn, and then also App ID. And so you can see that we've actually completed a number of these steps already. And then at the end, we'll be working with these, generating these signed JWTs. I'm not sure if we'll get to that specifically in this lab, but you'll be able to do that on your own if you'd like to. using the instructions in this blog post. All right, so let's clone this repo. Back to our Cloud Shell. Love it. Check our lab instructions again. Change directory. Probably could have figured that out on my own. Now, we're going to open our app.js. All right. Beautifully formatted here. And indeed, we do see our config JSON here. If we go back to our app ID instance, which is hiding here, and we go to our application, let's take this guy. I believe that they're both, yeah, they're both regular web apps. We should be able to copy all of this and paste it into our file here. Beautiful, beautiful lack of indentation. Okay. And nice. Okay. And then you'll also see up here that we've got our LinkedIn client ID and LinkedIn secret. And if I consult our lab instructions again, I believe that it's going to ask us to change those. And this is just my LinkedIn page, so that's not what we were looking for. Ah, yes, nice. And get rid of you. All right. So now we can save this. It looks like this will be running on port 4000. So I'm guessing that we'll need to expose that as a route. So we will quit this. So now going back to that blog post. So at this point, we've gotten pretty far through here. And we'll want to update the resources private.pem file with our newly generated private key. And so I'll just go to my tab here. Okay. And our key is private key.pem. We're going to copy that into resources. Thanks. All right. So here is the, so there's two last things that you would do before integrating or before launching your application and finishing the lab. One is that you'll want to create and configure a custom payload for a signed JSON web token. Now there is this example as a guide here in the app ID blog post that's referenced at the top of the tutorial, right here. And you'll be able to do that with the private key that we generated a few steps ago. And then let's get back to this blog post. And then you'll configure your app to obtain app ID tokens using this example. Finally, you'll run the application using npm install and npm start. So let's go back to our Cloud Shell. So we do have a Docker file that actually shows us how to do this. And so this is something that Jenna was able to put together. Thanks, Jenna. And so it will actually run npm install and then npm start when the application first executes. So with this, now we have our application cloned down onto our local environment in the Cloud Shell. And we also have a Docker file that will allow it to deploy to Red Hat OpenShift. So Jenna, should we do source to image deployment, or should I build out a container myself?
Well, we do have a Docker file, so I'll let you make that choice.
Well, let's see.
You could use source to image might be a little quicker, easier.
I can't do source to image as far as I know, because I would need to set environment variables for private and public keys.
Oh, right.
The URLs inside the environment configuration for source to image. So I'm not sure if I can do that right now. Maybe we could do that in a part 2 of this lab, or maybe we could do this in a blog post, actually.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so unfortunately, this is the point in the lab where we leave the future steps to you, the end user. But this is the next steps that you would do: create and configure a custom payload for a signed JSON web token. Make sure that your application obtains the app ID token correctly. We've created the Docker file that will allow you to run npm install and npm start once your container is launched. The last thing you'll also do is expose a route, and you could actually do that through the UI. You'll expose a route to your application so that an external port 4000 will actually forward to your node port 4000, and then you'll take that endpoint and you'll put that into your LinkedIn application here. So this will be where your redirect URL goes to. So this will go to your application for your OAuth 2.0. So I'm sorry that we didn't complete the demo today. Hopefully that we can complete the entire thing in a future lab. But the goal, or the big benefit for you is, first of all, you learned how to use a custom identity provider with App ID. And secondly, you've seen the configuration steps you need to go through with LinkedIn. And then lastly, we were actually able to assign you a Red Hat OpenShift cluster that you can use for the next 24 to 48 hours or so. Because it is a Thursday here in San Francisco, they may be deprovisioned Friday, tomorrow. So make sure that if there's anything that you want to use your OpenShift cluster for, that you do it within the next 24 hours or so. Jenna, anything else we should cover while we're here?
Let me see. I think that's about it on this side. Let's see. So like Dave mentioned, we're working on a few things, part 2, and extending off of this content, as well as creating some new projects for you to get started with applications with the App ID integration, and that you can deploy to your OpenShift clusters, and some new tech stacks. We're working on some React applications for you. So actually, I would invite all of you to, let me just do this real quick. I would like to invite you to share your feedback. So one of the things that I would that Dave and I would like to know is, what tech stacks do you want to see projects in? So, as I mentioned, we're working on some React applications for you. We have a number of sample applications available with our IBM Cloud Starter Kits. But as I mentioned, we're working on some applications that you can clone the repo for and get up and running quickly that have the integrations built in, ready to go. So let us know what tech stacks you're looking for. You can do that at the link here. I can paste it in the chat as well. It's here for you. So that's the feedback survey is ibm.biz/os-linkedin-auth-survey. And it's a very open-ended feedback thing. So feel free to just say, hey, you guys were asking what technologies we want. This is what I want. Or, hey, I saw this really cool, IBM product. I want to see you build something with that. So let us know what you want to see, and we'll make sure that we deliver on those projects and technologies in upcoming workshops for you.
Cool. Yeah, I think I'd love the feedback, especially to see what kind of tech stacks you're looking for running an application on. I'm looking forward to the React application, Jenna, that you're working on. That looks really cool. I think that'll be a lot more relevant to our audience than perhaps the application that we use today. But yeah, any feedback is great. You will have the cluster for about 24 hours or so, so enjoy that. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. If you are able to get the JWT signed and you want to share that with everyone else, then please feel free to reach out to me. Let me just put my Twitter in the chat here. My DMs are open, and I know that Jenna also is pretty active on LinkedIn, so if you want to reach out to her there, I'm sure that she would enjoy that. Well, I guess depending on what you said to her.
Right. It depends on, I guess it depends. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me anywhere. Yeah, actually, let me share a few links here with all of you. Get to the bottom of this. Yes, and so we'll be adding on to, expanding on the lab guide that you have today. So feel free to hold on to that link. If not, we'll make sure we reshare as well in a few weeks when we build out our part 2. Maybe go over how to generate a JSON web token and lots of fun stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yeah, thank you. And let's see. Here we go. If you want to check out some more cool OpenShift stuff, these are in lab environments. But as Dave mentioned, you do have access to your OpenShift cluster. So highly recommend. As you mentioned, you only have access to it for a few days, and it's your cluster. You can deploy whatever applications or anything that you want to that. So make sure to make use of that while you have access. And we will see you next time. We'll be sending out updates for the extension onto today's content very soon.
Thanks, everyone. See you at a future workshop.
All right. See you guys soon.